What's up, y'all, and welcome back to CountryCast. Every now and then, we like to bring some of the more wilder and historical moments in country music, or interesting documentary content on the artist within the genre, as country music has some of the most richest history in music and, quite frankly, some of the most badass stories around. And today we are diving into our Volume 3 edition of Country Music's Most Shocking Moments. If you have not had a chance to check out Volume 1 and Volume 2 already, you can check those out on our channel as well. They are in the description of this video. Again, there is so much to talk about when it comes to what has happened in the business, and instead of looking all over the place for something that interests you in country, we are working to compile it all together in these volumes, making it accessible right here as a one-stop shop right on CountryCast. Our stories today cover topics all across the board, starting with arson and finishing out with a tragic, untimely passing in country music. Oh, and one artist that sees himself making our list for the first time is none other than the man, the myth, the legend himself, Mr. Merle Haggard. Just before we get into it all, I want to say thank you to all of our supporters out there and to the many of you who continue to tune in but are not yet subscribed. If you could please do us a favor and subscribe. Again, thank you to everyone. So with that, now it's time to sit back and relax as we dive into some more of country music's most shocking moments through the years. First up, we are going to revisit a man that has such a defining legacy on and off the stage. The man who wears all black, Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash has many wild times underneath his belt, but one that really stands out occurred back in 1965. Some of you may remember, it was quite the incident. It was when Johnny Cash was accused of burning down acres and acres of a national forest. 508 acres of it, to be exact. Like I said, Cash has got the stories. So what happened? The large fire, known as the Adobe, occurred on June 27, 1965, in the Los Padres National Forest located in California in the county of Ventura. And like I mentioned, Johnny Cash was alleged to have been the cause behind the fire during a fishing trip with his nephew, Damian Fielder. According to an article by the Tumbleweed Times, they shared a Riverside archive of the narrative report filed that day, which read, again, as you see notated here in the report, the fire started on the afternoon of Sunday, June 27th, 1965. It continues on and says, cause of the fire was a pickup truck driven by a fisherman, which became stuck straddling the berm on the north side of the road. Hot exhaust flames, or carbon particles from a faulty exhaust system, ignited grass and dead fuel under the vehicle. This in turn ignited the left front tire of the vehicle and surrounding fuel. Attempts by the fisherman and his two companions to control the fire were unsuccessful. Delay in ground initial attack action was a major factor in this becoming a large fire. The delay in initial report and travel time required by ground forces allowed the fire to become well established, and except for very effective air attack could have become much larger. Steep, hazardous terrain and darkness slowed completion of control time on the west line and allowed the fire to make a run at approximately 11:30 on the second day. Again, very effective air attack in support of ground forces ensured control. Early suppression action by heli-attack crews on the head of the fire with support by air tankers could possibly have held this fire until ground forces arrive to complete control. It finishes out by adding, when controlled, the fire had burned 508 acres of the national forest land. Now, Cash himself claimed the fire was caused by sparks from a defective exhaust system on his camper, as the report I just shared stated. Johnny Cash ended up being sued by the federal government due to the destroyed 508 acres of land, as well as driving off several of California's endangered condors. Muck Report shared an FBI file of the lawsuit against Cash following a FOIA request from one of their editors, J. Pat Brown. Here is that file, which reads, FBI files reveal the following information which may relate to the subject of this name check request. On June 23, 1967, a complaint for damages was filed against John R. Cash, also known as Johnny Cash, in United States District Court, Los Angeles, California, asking for $125,127.52 and alleging that a fire on June 27, 1965, destroyed 508 acres of Los Padres National Forest watershed near Sespe Creek. This fire reportedly was started by hot gases and sparks from a defective exhaust system on Cash's camper truck. According to the suit, the camper truck became stuck on a road along the creek. When Cash attempted to free the vehicle, he gunned the motor, setting off the gas and sparks. The government alleged that Cash failed to take reasonable precautions to control the fire and failed to report it to proper authorities. Final judgment was entered on June 30th, 1969, in favor of the United States in the amount of $82,000, with interest thereon at the rate of 6% per year from February 15th, 1969. As of February 1969, Cash maintained his home at Henderson, Tennessee. Now, during Johnny's time in court, he was asked by a judge why he did it, and Johnny, being Johnny, said, "I didn't do it, my truck did, and it's dead, so you can't question it." It has also been reported that Johnny felt little remorse as he claimed, "I don't care about your damn yellow buzzards." But ultimately, as the FBI file notated, Cash did settle the suit for $82,000. Talk about a true ring of fire, just a wild, wild story surrounding old Johnny Cash. Now let's move into our second topic of discussion. While we're on Johnny, might as well flow into a story with his name right in the middle of it again, but this time Merle Haggard was behind it all. Merle Haggard, like Johnny, has some legendary stories, but Merle going toe-to-toe with the record label executive and defending Johnny Cash in this moment is a damn good one. Back on the night of March 3rd, 2009, Hag was to accept a Career Achievement Award from country radio broadcasters, and during the night, fellow country artist Emmylou Harris performed one of Haggard's most beloved songs, Kern River. And well, it seemed as though Harris's performance of the song triggered an old memory of Haggard's, a memory where he went off and defended old Johnny Cash and his own music. As Merle hit the stage and gave his acceptance speech, he told the crowd about an executive at a label who hated Kern River and laid out the details of how the conversation at the time went between the two of them. Merle Haggard started off by saying, "I wanted to say that there was this other guy. I can't remember his name. He was head of CBS, and he made fun of my song. He said, 'Who in the hell knows where Kern River is at?'" According to an article from CMT, at the moment, an audience member shouted the name Rick Blackburn. Now, that's an important piece to this moving forward because Merle continued by laying out more of their conversation where Hag said Blackburn told him, "I'd like to tell you one more time, I don't like Kern River." Merle responded back to Blackburn with, "That's about the third time you've told me that." Blackburn pops back and says, "It's more like 5 times. Merle wasn't having it, and he responded with, "Well, I'm about 5 times short of telling you to go to hell. And who do you think you are? You're the son of a bitch that sat at that desk over there and fired Johnny Cash. Let it go down in history that you're the dumbest son of a bitch I've ever met." Now, apparently, Blackburn spoke to CMT after Merle's speech and responded by just saying, "He'll get more pleasure out of that than I'll get grief." As we know, Johnny Cash played a major role in Haggard's life as Merle watched and first saw Johnny perform while being incarcerated at San Quentin. And like Johnny, Merle never held anything back and forever stayed true to who he was. That's just legends protecting legends. Now getting into our next story, more prolific icons in the business, Alan Jackson and George Jones. This moment in country music time came back in 1999 at the CMA Awards in Nashville that year. Alan Jackson defended and took a stand for George Jones, a true icon. George Jones was scheduled to perform at the award show, singing his hit song, Choices, but there was a problem with that. The problem was that he was asked to cut his performance short, and well, Jones wasn't happy about it. or the treatment that he was getting. So Jones didn't show up. However, Alan Jackson was there, and he was also set to perform his hit song at the time, Papa Top, but he cut it short to only flow right into performing Jones's song, that's right, you guessed it, Choices, to honor George Jones and to stand with him after this all went down. The reaction from the crowd that night included fans and, of course, other country stars, and they gave an amazing reaction. It was a standing ovation. Country music stays preserved because of folks like Alan. And last but not least on this edition of Shocking Moments is the loss of one of the greats in country music, the First Lady of country music, Miss Tammy Wynette. The country music community lost one of its most beautiful souls and voices on April 6, 1998. However, the circumstances surrounding her untimely passing came into question by 3 of her 4 daughters, in which they filed a $50 million lawsuit against Wynette's doctor at the time, and they also named her late husband George Ritchie. According to an article by CNN at the time, the lawsuit filed by Wynette's daughters alleged curious circumstances around her passing, including a delay in calling the police and overprescription of drugs. The lawsuit also alleged that Wynette's husband Ritchie ignored advice to take Wynette to a hospital when she became ill, and he contributed to her addiction to pain pills, which she was on due to a variety of health problems throughout her life, including chronic intestinal pain and blood clots. One of Wynette's daughters, Jackie Daly, even released a book titled Tammy Wynette, A Daughter Recalls Her Mother's Tragic Life and Death. And within the book, Daly claimed that the National Enquirer knew of Tammy's passing long before the authorities did. Also to note, at the time of Tammy's passing, according to the earlier article that I mentioned by CNN, Ritchie found Tammy Wynette and contacted her doctor, who flew in and signed the death certificate and listed a pulmonary embolism, a blood clot within her lungs, as the cause of death. Now, an autopsy was also not conducted immediately following her passing. However, in the following year of 1999, Tammy Wynette's body was exhumed at the request of her daughters for an autopsy to be completed after obtaining a court order. Her late husband Ritchie also agreed to the autopsy and said he wanted to clarify for everyone how Tammy died so we can all move on. The medical examiner for Davidson County at the time performed the autopsy, and again, according to the CNN article, he stated that there was significant evidence of previous blood clots, which compromised her lungs and put pressure on her heart. 2 prescription drugs were also found in Wynette's blood. However, the medical examiner indicated that there may have been a better indication of drug levels in her blood if the autopsy was performed sooner, and that it is virtually impossible to determine the exact drug levels at the time of Wynette's death or to what extent, if any, these drugs contributed to her heart failure and death. Ultimately, Wynette's daughters dropped Ritchie's name from the suit and settled their suit with Wynette's doctor, Wallace Marsh, by reaching an agreement, according to an article from Billboard at the time. No other cause of death could be determined other than the previous finding from Marsh of a pulmonary embolism. Tammy Wynette will forever be remembered as having one of the most delicate and amazing voices in country music, and her music will forever stand the test of time. Guys, thank y'all for tuning in as always, and be sure to check back for Volume 5 of this series. If there are any moments from an artist or just an artist you want to hear about, please let us know down below in the comments. Again, thank y'all for tuning in. That will be it for CountryCast.